Well, it's been a wonderful day for me to sit back here and watch the people on stage and to get to meet them. And I'm struck by how they're really just ordinary folks, really, but they're extraordinary individuals. Our next speaker is Cady Coleman. And when Cady sat down next to me, she said, could I look at my intro? I said, yes, okay. She said, I'm the astronaut. She said, I'm the astronaut. And that's what she said. We had earlier a rocket scientist, now meet an astronaut, Cady Coleman. She's been on 2 space shuttle missions, most recently one that kept her in space for 159 days. Meet the astronaut.
Thank you. Well, you know, where I work, I don't get to say that because there's a whole bunch of us. And any of us would have been fascinated to be here today. It's really just a great pleasure for me to have been listening to all the talks. I was actually going to go work out and do other things because I thought, you know, I have all these things I should do today. And I couldn't leave. I mean, it's just been fascinating. I listened to Bob Langer's talk, and my first thought was just, isn't science amazing? I mean, everyone who's an astronaut is something else first, and I'm a polymer chemist, and a talk like that makes me really, really proud to have come from that kind of background. So I'm going to show you a little bit about what we've done with that kind of background for somebody like me. This is the International Space Station. It was my home for about 5.5 months. I will tell you that that was just not long enough. It's an amazing place. I know that today we are asking all of you to sort of dig down and think hard and figure out how, after hearing the talks today, you can go out and make a difference. And there's some things that I'm going to tell you today that you don't have to do a thing. It is already being done, and to me, it's astoundingly exciting. But first, I have to correct some wrong impressions. And that is, when I talk to my family, including my mother, she says, well, so how is it, you know, now that you're back and, you know, you don't really have a job anymore because the space program is over? And I'm like, Mom, it's not over. First of all, okay, the space station is still up there. There are 6 people up there. A supply ship just launched a few hours ago and docked about 1 hour ago exactly with the International Space Station, brought 3 tons of supplies to the crew of 6 that are up there, 3 Russians, 2 Americans, and 1 Canadian. So we've got an International Space Station that is up there all the time doing hundreds of different science experiments. I won't talk about every one, but I'm going to just give you a taste of why we might be up there doing that as a group of 16 nations who built the International Space Station. That would be Russia, the US, Japan, Canada, and I'll say the European Space Agency, which is 16 countries in Europe. So that is ongoing. And the way we get up there, now that we have retired the space shuttle, the way we get up there is the Russian Soyuz. You're going to see some of that. And I know it's hard to know that the space shuttle is retired, but it was the right thing to do. I mean, it took so many people and so many resources. It did great things. It built the space station that you're about to see, and it brought all manner of different kinds of people up to space, which has a giant ripple effect across the world, where people like me who grew up, I'm 52, I was born in 1960, and I never thought about being an astronaut because it just wasn't what girls did when I was growing up. And it wasn't until I was in college at MIT, Sally Ride, the first American woman astronaut, came to talk, and I just thought, wow, I want that job. I never thought I'd get it, but it turns out that real people get jobs like this. And so the space shuttle, building all those things and bringing all those people up to space, it has those ripple effects that there are kids out there and adults that are inspired by what we do in space, and they're using that inspiration to make discoveries and be part of the future down here. So let's go ahead. Let's see, I guess I have a clicker here. So this is the International Space Station. It's just a fascinating place. So this is the place, that part of it that we live in. This big part with the solar arrays and the truss, that's where we do our spacewalks. But it's the inside, and it's about like 8 train cars up and down. Some of them are just attached in ways you can't quite see them there. But that's our space station. This is our crew of 6, 3 Russians, 2 Americans, and 1 Italian. And this is the size of the Soyuz. It is a small place to go camping with 1 or 2 people who may or may not be your best friends. And this is a little video. It's about 4 minutes long here. And it just shows a little bit about what it was like to launch, what it was like to be up there living on the space station. And then I'm going to whip through some of the science experiments that I think, at least to me, are very meaningful. So there's the space station. I love that this is not animation. This is film taken by a shuttle of the space station. And so this is real. It's not animation. But before you get there, there's a lot of practicing and getting ready. This is us in the Soyuz. You can see how small and tiny it really is. And I'm a small person. Those guys are big. This is the U.S. spacesuit that we use to do our spacewalks. Paolo and I are practicing for contingencies. And now we're at launch night. And there's a lot of Russian traditions. We sign the door of the quarantine place we're in. We get blessed by the priest. I'm waving to my son and my husband. This is launch night. This is just a couple hours before launch. Getting our suits pressure checked to make sure that they're tight. I'm begging the guys to take small steps and slow ones, and they forgot. I mean, if you see the whole film, it looks like Charlie Chaplin, you know. But I managed to catch up, and there I was climbing up the steps to the launch pad. The Russian bosses, and you can go ahead and you can mute the audio here until we get to that slide 24. Thanks. The Russian bosses actually give you a good swift kick in the rear end on your way up that ladder. But here is 8.5 minutes after leaving the launch pad. You are in space in this tiny little capsule orbiting the Earth for about a day and a half, which was magical to be in something so small, just the three of you. They become your best friends. We arrived on the space station just before Christmas. This is my favorite scene of the whole film. And even though you see my rear end, it's because it's what living and working in space is like. It's about flying. That Japanese supply ship there is flying. It's next to us, 17,500 miles an hour. That's how fast both of us are going. We were up there during the Japanese tsunami, and that was actually a very emotional time to be in space with the Japanese supply ship. We made, and yes, I have very big hair, we made white cranes, which stand for hope and rebuilding for the Japanese people. We did a bunch of different science experiments. This is actually one of the other supply ships that came. We had a lot of supply ships that came and went, including the space shuttle. We had 2 space shuttles arrive with the last pieces of the space station that were going to get attached. And this is the space shuttle looking at us, and us looking at the space shuttle. That's them looking at us, getting bigger and bigger. It's like arriving in a metropolis up in space. This was the most nervous I was for the whole mission, I would say, because we had to take pictures of the underside of the space shuttle. They do sort of a pirouette in front of us, and we take a series of many, many photos of the belly of the space shuttle to make sure that the heat shield is intact. And if you mess up those pictures, we all lose a day of working together up in space because you have to take them again using the robotic arm. So probably the most nervous I was, but Paolo and I apparently were pretty good photographers. We were pretty relieved. And here they are docking with the space station. And it's kind of fun after being up there with 6 people, even though we all got along just great. It's kind of fun to have new visitors and new folks, and this is our outpost in space. And the arrival of our friends, who brought supplies for experiments, supplies for us, care packages, some of that bad food that was mentioned earlier. And there's an out-of-control extension cord in space. So, the space station. That's how big it is. People worry about, up there, 5 guys and you in this tiny little space. It is not tiny. It's about 8 train cars without all the seats in them put together. It's just that some of them are attached, up or down or sideways. When I think about space and space station, I think about space suits, and this is what you might think we're doing. And we would have loved to have done that, but we didn't have anything expensive or dangerous that needed fixed outside. We were so disappointed. But this is what we did do, and it's so important. Up there, we're discovering things. And there's benefits down here on Earth, and there's benefits for future space exploration. This is a little tiny video about some of the experiments that we do. This is a liquid. We're looking at what liquids really want to do. Down here, it's almost impossible to know that because there's really tiny forces that have a big effect on every liquid flowing through a pipe. Everything that's made using liquid flowing through a pipe, that's going to have small, tiny forces that are hard to measure down here on the Earth. One of my favorite experiments, mostly because it pertains directly to me and to many women that I know, is osteoporosis work. Up there, we lose bone and muscle at the rate of 10 times the way a woman who is 70 who has osteoporosis, 10 times the rate that she would lose muscle and bone. So what she loses in a year, I lose in a month up there. Now, the good news is I actually came back, I can only give you my own data, I came back with all the bone and muscle that I left with. And it's because we're learning how to do that. And we're looking at, I have some bad news for you, okay? The bad news is that exercise is here to stay. It really seems to be quite an effective countermeasure. And there you see Brew on our weightlifting machine. It works on a system of resistance. And over on the side there, you can see the mesh of bone and then the osteoporosis bone where that mesh is kind of eaten away. But we're actually rebuilding that bone up in space. And I came back with the same density. It doesn't, I mean, the not as good news, it doesn't mean my bones are the same as when I left. I probably have kind of thicker pipes, thicker coatings on the outside of my bones. But the inside is probably a little eaten away, like we see in this picture. And we'll have to see what that means structurally, but I have in general probably a cleaner medical history than a woman who's 70, and so that means that in those 6 months we can take a lot of different data points using blood, urine to understand what's happening about rebuilding bone and losing bone. This is Sunny Williams up there, and when you see words on these slides, there's no words that you need to read. You'll be able to see all this on the internet afterwards. But basically, we're finding out that vitamin D is a really important element of building bone as well, plus in your diet. Another really important earth benefit is understanding what happens to aging hearts, your cardiovascular system. Our hearts don't have to work as hard to pump blood up and down, and so our hearts age in a certain way and our heart muscle changes size, and we did more measurements than I could even begin to count of Holter monitors and blood pressure mechanisms. We grow crystals up there. They're really important for protein crystal growth, to design drugs to cure diseases. It's important in material science to understand what kinds of materials we could have. Sometimes that's hard to know when we have big molecules and little molecules, and the big things like to settle to the bottom and the little things are floating around. What could happen? What kind of material could you make if you really could have an even distribution of those different molecules, say in a metal? And I guarantee you that the answer is really important to some of you here, because that is how we made those largely improved golf clubs. I'm not kidding. And we're not going to have a factory, certainly, of golf clubs up in space, but we are going to understand what kinds of materials are possible by making them the benchmark materials up in space and then bringing them back down here. Combustion experiments, understanding combustion is much, there's just the dimensions of it we can't understand down here that we can up there because of the lack of convection. Those lighter gases are not rising. And so for understanding soot production, for understanding pollution, we've already talked about liquids a little bit, finding out, what do liquids really want to do. It's pretty important when it comes to the bathroom. I'm not going to show you the bathroom video, but our whole plumbing system up there is an amazing recycling system. And it's really important for other processes down here as well. What we've learned about how to go from recycling all of our urine and all of our condensation, everything like that gets recycled, goes through a bunch of pipes, and then we drink it. I know, it sounds gross, but it happens down here too with water recycling plants. But it turns out that what we're learning up there with that kind of recycling is really applicable to disaster and human relief zones as well, the same kind of filtration processes. We actually do not have a weight gaining problem up there because the food all looks like that. It's pretty fun to have.
Also by internet.
Everything is just in a different dimension up there. And what is fun is also just...
I wanted to bring something up here to space on my
could,
mission.
Cut the audio there too. Just wanted to show you. For the next slide, we'll do audio, Ryan. So I just wanted to show you a little bit about living and being human up in space. I brought flutes up there because I'm a flute player, and actually the last time I played the flute was right here in Naples in the Symphony Hall. Did anybody come to the Symphony on Saturday night? None of you? Oh, you were here? So I played on the stage with the chieftains because I brought their flutes to space. If you brought the chieftains, this Irish band, if you brought their flutes to space, you would get to play with them as well. I was here for the conference, and we have kind of a standing little deal that whenever I am in town, the same town they are, that we get to play together. I also brought a flute for Ian Anderson of the rock group Jethro Tull, and this is where audio would be good. So this is Ian Anderson's flute. And we wanted to play something together, but he was very far away. Wow. We have a time limit here. He did some nice editing. But I show these slides not to show off my flute playing. I'm the first to admit that I'm an amateur flute player who just likes to play. But I'm a person who lived on the space station, and as people who live up there, we're humans, and it's a fascinating place to look in on. And I think especially right now, that was some of the folks that were in the band on the shuttle crew that came up. Chris Hadfield is up in space. Chris and I have played in a band in sort of tacky wine bars, and actually nice wine bars too, and coffee houses for 20 years. But it's a little hard to do that now because he's up in space. But we'll actually play a concert together in Houston with the symphony next Friday night. And I think that Randy showed all of us in one of the breaks that it's easy, that you can bridge the gap between space and Earth or around the world, that all these gaps are bridgeable if you just have the imagination to do it. I want to show you a few pictures of our planet. My time is running out here, but just our planet as we look at it. We look out our amazing cupola window. This is my friend Tracy Caldwell. I think an epic picture that you'll see for many, many years of a human living in an amazing place. We take thousands and thousands of pictures up there. Italy, indeed, shaped like a boot. And some really neat time-lapse photography that you can see on the internet now, where all these yellow things are lights, all the little white flashes are lightning, and this is going from Asia over through Europe. It's just amazing. We go around actually not as fast as that. We go around slower than that. But I'm from New England. I'm from Massachusetts, so I think nice just to see a perspective there. You can see, Long Island and New York and the Hudson and Boston and Cape Cod. One of my favorite astronauts that I flew with, we looked at this kind of picture the first time we flew, and he looks down. He has a big Massachusetts accent. He says, "Oh my God, it looks just like the map." And it's a special place. We see it 16 times a day. We go around the Earth. This is kind of a wistful picture of New England and Cape Cod. Sooner or later, it's time to land, to leave the space station. Landing is pretty exciting. It's like going over Niagara Falls in a barrel, on fire, followed by a collision with a Mack truck. But it all works. And then in physics is what makes it work. We land with our capsule that has protected us and taken us a long, long way. It's funny to look out and suddenly be home again, talking to my family, and then just looking at what is next. And what is next is really important. We have taken the exploration business back. NASA has been in the business of bringing people up and down to space. We know how to do that, and it's wrong for us to be doing it when commercial companies could be doing it faster and more efficiently, and they are. So the SpaceX company has successfully launched a few ships up to the International Space Station. You're going to see them do that again on March 1st. So those are supply ships. Sooner or later, they'll be bringing people. This is a prototype of the Sierra Nevada vehicle. And this is what it's like to actually capture some of these supply ships up there. It's a really nice view and a sort of different way to look at New York City and the Hudson, the Finger Lakes, Lake Ontario. So always a different kind of view. So we have these new commercial vehicles, but it doesn't change the fact that when you come home, that's really important. I live in New England. It looks like this right now today. And I show you my family, not just to show you my family, but because I think that it's why we're here. We're here because of family, because of kids, because they are the future. And we don't know what they're going to do next sometimes. It takes a whole family. This is my husband, who's a glass artist, who makes glass planets. People give us a hard time because he makes them and I like to go around them. They're beautiful. But everybody explores in their own different ways. And my third grade teachers didn't know that I would go to the White House and meet the president with the Kelly twins. But I did. And we don't know who are the next ones. And so we have to take care of all of them because they have faces like this and they want to know things. And we have to especially make sure that we include the ones that are women and minorities because they bring so many things to the future, and without it, we will be lost. So our space station is up there right now. We're having our commercial companies like SpaceX, Orbital, building those new supply ships to bring supplies and eventually people up and down to the space station. But the biggest part of the future is going back to the moon, going to Mars, and that is what NASA is doing, the exploration business. In 2014, which is soon, will be the first launch of our newest exploration vehicle. Looks like an Apollo capsule because its physics hasn't changed. It's still the way to get to space. A new launching system, a new rocket. First test is less than 2 years from now. It is so, so soon. And sooner or later, we will be having people on those vehicles as well. 2017 is the next test of the vehicle with the real launch system. And so space is not over. It's not done. I think that we've heard a lot of really fascinating people talk today, and everybody is actually telling you the same thing, and that is that the future is within our grasp. Everybody has to use their own imagination, do their own part. We're getting there already, but we will get even further. So thank you.